G'day, Professor Joseph Drew here. Lots of talk about cost of living pressures, and they're real. I'm feeling them, I'm sure you're feeling them too. But what does the last 10 years of outstanding rates, fees, and charges data tell us about the situation? I think you'll be very surprised at what you're about to see. Now, in a second, I'll show you the graphs for the state, rural, and urban councils, and it's important to watch it all the way through because it's very different for rural and urban councils, and there's very good reasons for it. But before we do so, I just need to underline the point that the percent of rates, fees, and charges outstanding is just one measure of capacity to pay, and it's by no means the best measure. It's probably in the middle there somewhere. The worst measure is what the New South Wales Office of Local Government tells people to do, which is to compare average rates. That's probably the silliest thing you can do. The data is skewed, you know the land value data is skewed, and the statistic tells you nothing about capacity to pay. Capacity to pay is something you measure according to the incomes of the people in the area. There's a few different ways to do it. The best way is the econometric method, where you put in all the incomes of people in the local government area for all the similar councils throughout the state over many years, come up with a formula, and then insert the precise figures for the local government you're interested in, and you'll get a precise estimate of average revenue effort. But without further ado, I'll show you these graphs because they're really interesting, particularly in the context of this cost of living discussion, particularly in the context of a financial sustainability review, which was prompted by cost of living discussions. So this is what 10 years of outstanding rates, fees, and charges data looks like for the whole state. The 10-year average is about 6.44%, and we're basically right smack bang on the 10-year average at the moment. We have been for the last couple of years. So the cost of living narrative, the pressure that encouraged the financial sustainability review at present, is not being reflected in these figures at all. Now, I did get lots of feedback about my videos some time ago where I had mean median mode, Q1, Q3, and was talking about all these things, and apparently no one wanted the maths lesson. So I'm just giving you the mean, the median, and the standard deviation from now on. The standard deviation is important. It tells you the measure of spread. It tells you how much reliance you can put on the average. When the mean and the median are similar, it means that you can use either one pretty well interchangeably. In this case, they are similar, but there is quite a big spread. And you'll notice in the last couple of years that spread has narrowed. It's got less. That's a good thing. Just a really quick reminder, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. If you haven't given a copy of one of these videos to a mate and asked them to subscribe, please do so. I do have that target 500, and it is very important. So this graph is the urban councils over the last 10 years. You can see in the last couple of years it has been higher. The urban councils are struggling more to collect their rates, fees and charges, but relative to the whole state, that figure is much lower than the whole state. You'll notice that the spread, the grey line, has reduced. That's a good thing. It's narrowing over time. But it's an interesting thing to contrast the urban councils to the whole state, and in a minute you're going to get a very big surprise when you see the rural councils. Now the rural councils, as you can see, the 10-year average is much, much higher. It's not because people in rural areas like where I live, don't want to pay their taxes. It's because of two main factors. One is rural areas are very susceptible to droughts and changes in commodity prices and the like. So if the wool price plunges and the local government area is mainly growing wool, people are going to struggle to pay their rates. If there's a drought, people are going to struggle to pay their rates. That's why in the good old days before rate capping, rural councils, many years they wouldn't put the rates up. When they had really good seasons, they'd play catch up and put the rates up a lot. And you need that sort of flexibility in rural areas. And I can only assume that people that advocate for the rate capping regime have never lived in a rural area, have never farmed, or they would know that increases every single year just isn't going to work in that sort of demographic. Climate's unpredictable, soft commodity prices unpredictable. The other reason why rates, fees and charges are much higher outstanding levels in rural areas is that the cost of living pressure has been much higher in rural areas. Now, one of the main drivers of this inflation over the last couple of years has been the cost of energy, particularly fuel. Everything that comes out to a rural area comes out via a truck. Our prices have been rising much, much faster than the prices for city dwellers. It's just a fact. So this cost of living's hurting a lot more in rural areas. Another fact that you can't see in the graph, but I know from a previous research, and I'm sure I've talked about it in other videos, is that the revenue effort is much, much higher in rural areas than what it is in urban areas. Otherwise stated, the rates as a proportion of our incomes in rural areas is much, much higher than what rates are as a proportion of incomes in urban areas. Now that arises from two facts. One is that urban wages tend to be higher than rural wages, number one. The other really important fact is that our grant system is an abject failure. We are not allocating grants according to the aims of the federal legislation. Rural councils have been shortchanged for decades, and this is why we pay considerably more local government tax as a proportion of our incomes than what people do in urban areas, yet we don't get the adventure playgrounds and bitumen on all our roads and all those discretionary services that they get in urban areas. There's a reason why the grant system's there. It's to give everyone a fair go. People in rural areas deserve a fair go, just like people in urban areas. And until we fix this little chaotic mess that we have, rural people are going to continue to be slugged with higher local government taxes, and they're going to continue to be struggling to pay those local government taxes. You will also have noticed there was more bumps in the rural local government taxes and fees outstanding. That's because of that seasonality when you get droughts and prices going down and up and things like that. You will also have noted that the grey line was much higher. There's a much bigger gap because, droughts might affect half a dozen council areas and not the other ones. Therefore, you're getting more spread in the ability and capacity of councils to collect rates, fees and charges. Lots of food for thought here. The data, certainly at the state level, is not consistent with the narrative. That is not consistent with the narrative which is driving the financial sustainability inquiry at present. That's interesting. As I said, we can also see the particular disadvantages, and some people would say unfairness, on the burdens placed on rural councils compared to urban councils, and that's something that should be looked at in the inquiry, as should a comparison of revenue efforts, whether you calculate it econometrically or you calculate it with the old-fashioned ratios. But whatever you do, do not use average rates to make any comparisons. It's the single worst, silliest thing anyone could do. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, give it the thumbs up, let me know, send me an email, whatever, so I know to make more like this. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.